Hey everyone, my name is Matt Lute. I am the founder of Atticus Family Law, and I've been practicing for 22 years. And essentially, as a Minnesota divorce attorney, I've helped people, hundreds of people at this point, um, successfully navigate their divorce. Not just navigate it, but transition. Go from single, married to single, and with that, all of the changes. And there's so much more to successful divorce transitions than just getting a divorce decree. And that's where I specialize in, from the standpoint of whether it's the mindset management, getting you the other information, logistics, and resources, introductions to other professionals. Let's make sure you're thriving within weeks of your divorce. That sounds weird, but you got a choice. 10% of life is what happens to you. 90% is how you react to it. Whether you want the divorce or not, you've got a next best life coming. Let's make sure it's a best life. The next chapter's here. You don't want to be wallowing because you didn't like the way the first chapter played out. Instead, let's get you back to being happy, successful, the things that really matter most. All right, I got a bunch of questions here. Let's see what I've got. Chris, is residency required to file for divorce in Minnesota? Yes, there is a residency requirement. You have to have lived in the state of Minnesota for 180 days. This is relevant to anyone that perhaps they're married without children, they've split from their spouse, they've come here from a different state. A lot of times it's North Dakota, sometimes Iowa. Of course, with the Twin Cities this close to Wisconsin, that's not uncommon. And then they decide that they want to file. And if they haven't been here 180 days, not going to be filing in Minnesota. But once it's been 180 days, they can file here, even if they're married in another state. It's a good question, Chris. Sam, does it matter who files first in a divorce? This is a great question. No, it does not. There are some opportunities and consequences that come about. For instance, like if your divorce were to go to trial, and bear in mind only 3% of Minnesota divorces ever go to trial. But if it were, whoever is the petitioner starts the trial by putting on their case, and then the other side gets to go. So sometimes there's an opportunity as a respondent in a divorce to, if it were to go to trial, the other side would have to fully showcase their circumstances and their arguments before you had to worry about putting on your own, which can sometimes be advantageous, albeit in divorce, by the time you get to trial, you and your attorney should know everything, all the relevant facts. So maybe that's not really all that pertinent. But the other aspect of that is sometimes being the petitioner in a divorce trial means that you get to basically set this up and have the judge see it exactly as you want to see it before they have a chance to offer their own version. And maybe they never recover from the fact that the judge basically thought to themselves, everything the petitioner has to say sounds perfectly good. They've admitted all their weak points and how they're not nearly as relevant. And now everything the respondent has to say isn't all that compelling to give the judge a different view of the case. So there's that. Sometimes also, like, being a respondent is sometimes also valuable from the standpoint that if you don't have to answer the petition for a while because maybe you got an extension or maybe they just waived it for the time being, maybe you don't have to reveal something. And if in cases where there's anger management or domestic violence, not having to reveal that you're interested in sole physical or sole legal custody of your children or supervised parenting time for your abusive spouse buys you time, buys you weeks without having to create the next dust up and or risk of violent altercation. But ultimately, judges do not care. Judges they don't want people trying to jockey for position as to being petitioner respondent, thinking there's some notable advantage. So they don't give anybody that sort of advantage. All right, Jordan, how is property divided in divorce? Great question. although very complicated. Within the statutes, there's the call for an equitable division. And I often say that, like, out of 10 divorces, well more than 5% of the 10, or 5 of the 10, are going to be equal divisions. And then when there's some other reasons to do it differently, maybe they're by agreement, where, like, instead of paying spousal maintenance, I'll give you extra property out of my cut. Or maybe there was some dissipation where somebody, either because of marital waste or some purposeful, like, spending down on the marital estate to deprive the other side. You've got that coming in. Sometimes it's just sort of like too difficult, and so, like, something that might be a 55-45 is equitable, even if it's not equal. But each asset, in regards to dividing it, you don't have to necessarily cut every asset in half. You could do a net total, so that maybe you get the house, these retirement, these vehicles, I get the cabin, this other stock options, and these recreational vehicles. And then when it's all done, one person's got a $10,000 advantage over the other. So somebody's got to cut a $5,000 check to make it equal. So you don't have to divide each equally. But each asset's different. Like, and you typically have to worry about retitling each asset as well. All right, let's see here. Morgan asks, how long does the process normally take? This varies. There's some divorces where we can knock it out in 90 days. There's a lot more that are closer to the 5 to 6 month range. And then there's plenty that go more than 12 months. It's going to depend on your facts. There's not even necessarily a critical density with a small fraction of cases that are outside of a very tight timeline. It's a long, like, all right, so you got 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 12 months. Like, it's a real graduated bell curve, as opposed to and then you got to say, oh, what's that number? It's not like that. All right. Let's see what else we got. Riley asked, how does spousal maintenance determined? First off, spousal maintenance is more of an art than it is science. It's not like child support where you just stick in the numbers and run a calculation. Instead, it's about balancing act between what's reasonable needs versus reasonable ability to pay, what people's budgets are, how we're defining income, and as a result of that, then you get to negotiate. And then when lawyers negotiate, they come up with clever arguments and good juxtaposition, and that's where the art comes in, because it's like the craft of debate and negotiation. It's much more of an art than a pure science. Frankly, there's a lot more that goes into it. If you're interested, and this is relevant to you, if you were to contact my office, we've got a book with a number of really good sort of explanations that we could easily send to you free of cost. For spousal maintenance, it's really good, let alone everything else is great. And it provides you a bunch of other best practices that make sure that your divorce goes well. All right, let's see what else we got here. We got a few more minutes left. Actually, I got a minute left. So, is divorce really a no-fault state? It is. Every once in a while, you watch a movie and you realize that a state like California, sometimes you could have a spouse that says, no, I don't want this divorce. And then the divorce petitioning spouse has to prove to a judge that there was abuse, neglect, infidelity, or something else that warrants the divorce, because they have to prove the fault to get the divorce. Minnesota's not like that. Minnesota is instead a no-fault case. All it takes is one person swearing to the fact that there's been an irretrievable breakdown in the marital relationship. And once that's sworn to, it's rarely questioned. In fact, in my 22 years, I've never known it to be questioned. Even when there was a good reason to make that argument, the attorneys have pulled the punch and not pursued that. So that's my Ask Me Anything. Glad to have you. Look for the next one.